Four, three, two, and one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is an amazing way for you to exit highly appreciated assets, primary homes, luxury real estate, commercial real estate, cryptocurrency, stocks, so you can defer millions of dollars of capital gains tax, eliminate some estate tax, and so you can preserve and then create more wealth on your terms at your timing. For those who don't know me, my name is Brett Swarts, and I'm founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. And each episode, I'm joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together, we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We're also streaming on expert CRE secrets as well for all the commercial real estate entrepreneurs, investors, and experts out there. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, I'm excited about our next guest. He's out of the great state of California. He's a native from California, spent some time in Hawaii, and he's on a mission to help his clients create and preserve more wealth. In fact, he advises private individuals and families on their personal investment and advanced planning needs. In addition, he oversees the firm One Capital Management LLC's retirement and corporate service practice. Previously, our guest spent 4 years as an investment advisor with the boutique private wealth management firm in Los Angeles. And he was also head of corporate service business development for American Financial Network for 3 years, and so much more. Please welcome to the show with me, Brad Barrett. Brad, how are we doing?
Good, Brett. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, could you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah. So as a private wealth manager, I've been doing it coming up on 20 years here. I share with people I never really flipped a burger before. So I've been doing this since I was 16 years old. I had a cathartic event in my life that happened that led me to basically beg a bank to give me a teller job when I was in high school. And I went on from there, got my economics degree and started my practice in college. Worked for broker dealer for a couple years and then joined up with my partners here at One Capital about 13, 14 years ago. And we grew the firm from about $500 million or so to about $5 billion today, just serving private wealth families across this great nation of ours with niches in sports and entertainment, advanced planning, ultra high net worth individuals, first responders, and across the board. Married, 2 kids, live in California, and excited to be here. So thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely. We're talking about the psychology of money, everybody, and it's going to be amazing because you got a lot of experience and a lot of expertise and a lot of passion on Brad's end. And so we'll be digging into the psychology of money in just a minute. But before we go there, Brad, I want to take one other step backwards. I believe you've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. So once you go back to the younger days, maybe the days that you're surfing in the Malibu waves there in California, what's maybe 1 or 2 strengths that you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help and bless people today?
Great question. I actually, when I was 16 years old, my dad worked for a company for about 20 years, and that company actually gone bankrupt. So it actually affected thousands of people. It was one of the largest corporate bankruptcies in the nation. It was crazy. And I was 16 years old, just trying to understand what was going on. I had 2 younger sisters. And I remember right then and there, in my mind, God touched my heart and said, I want you to learn everything you possibly can about money. So in my personal experience, I didn't want that to happen to me ever again. But then more than that, that's where he touched my heart and said, this is what I want you to do for your life. And I feel like I was gifted with the ability to connect with people, really empathize with where they're at. And I obviously coming from a background where I can share with people, I think one of the biggest psychologies that we'll probably talk about today around money in general, whether it's taxes, investments, savings, doesn't matter, is losing it. Right. And so I think I had been there before. I'd sat in that seat. And so I wanted to share that with the world and do it through the eyes of a financial advisor. And so I got all my designations, my licenses, and that's what I felt like he, touched me with then. And that's what I wanted to share with the world.
Fantastic. Connecting with people, empathizing, and sharing real world examples of coming from the bottom, right? So been there for others is sure the key, right? And so, by the way, you can learn more about Brad Barrett, who's a certified financial planner, by going to his YouTube channel. It's called Make Your Money Matter. At Brad Barrett, it's Make Your Money Matter, and Barrett is spelled Barrett. All right, Brad, let's jump right in to the topic at hand. What would you say is the number one secret, Brad, to the psychology of money?
So it's funny. I actually started talking a lot about this probably 10 years ago, as I realized that at that point I was 10 years into the business with working with clients. And, I came into this business like a lot of us do, really with the numerical data. I had to know all these numbers, these equations, how to invest, and all these things, right? And what I found after about 10 years of doing it was a lot of clients' worries and a lot of our worries as humans really had a little bit less to do with the quantitative data. It had a lot more to do with the qualitative. And this is like the interest, the goals, the relationships, the values we all carry. And money, we all know, is just a tool, right? It is not the thing. It is just something that we use to do the things we want to do. And so what's interesting about a couple of years ago, in fact, the book Psychology of Money was written by a guy named Morgan Housel, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So it's interesting we're even titling that, because I don't know if you've read that book before, Brett, but it's an amazing book. I would recommend it for anybody and everybody. I've read it multiple times. And it's just a great example of, there's plenty of studies on psychology of money. This goes back way back. I have plenty of books behind me on the psychology of money, but that one was so cool because it laid it out. He wrote it so well, in my opinion, with anecdotal evidence, stories, and just different things. And I think the number one thing that most people get wrong about money is that they actually think it has some metric in our life to do the things we want to do. And I've seen it time and time again with clients that if they obtain that theory or whatever that money is, that monetary goal of theirs, which again is a great thing, we always tend to like move the goalposts. And we do that in our life as well. And I think it's important in financial advising that we talk about that, and just kind of, we start here at One Capital Management with a conversation of what's your why with a client. And we do that simply because when someone comes in and meets with us, we want to understand who they are, and again, it's less questions or items we need to gather around their numbers, their income, their debts, their assets. Those are important. But we're also trying to figure out what their behavioral financial like DNA is. Like they've come into our office, they've met with us via Zoom, and they have a history. They're coming in here from somewhere. I just said, Brett, the other day, I had a great example. Within a week span of a review meeting with clients, I had one client who very clearly shared with me that, he wants to spend every dollar he can when he can. He's totally living the live for now moment, right? Because his parents had saved. And then like 7 months after he retired, his dad passed away unexpectedly. Mom went 2 years later. So his view of money was very much like, I want to spend it. I understand saving, investing, but I want to spend it. And literally the week later, I was having a review with a client. We were talking about estate planning and legacy planning conversations. And through that discovery it was a newer client, we were realizing that their parents were 97 and 99 years old and in full health. So in their mind, they were so focused on longevity. And so it was just a great example of two polar, opposites when you talk about planning. And it's a great example and a story to share that we're all different. And I think the way we treat money needs to be different as well. And so that enters into the psychology of how we individually perceive money, what it means to us, what we want from it. And ultimately, we want to end up the one thing we all know we want is time. It's the one commodity in life we can't get back. I speak about it often. My one parlor trick is I can tell someone I can prove to you that you care about time more than money, because if a 95-year-old today came to you and said, hey, man, I'll trade you places. I'll give you $10 billion and I'll trade you places permanently. And I'd ask someone, would you do that? The answer would likely be no. If you're 60 years old and you answer that question, you would lose 35 years of your life. Time matters more. And so understanding your why, understanding where your, not just psychology in general, by the way, there's plenty of studies on that, but your psychology. And I think a good advisor can ask the right questions, get into the mindset, help you understand your goals and objectives with money, because most clients come in, they're not totally entirely sure, right? So we want to help them get to that point by asking the right questions, understanding who they are, meeting with them kneecap to kneecap, empathizing with them, understanding their story, because everyone has a financial story. Some people grew up on food stamps. Some people grew up on silver spoon. We want to understand there's two different walks of life out there, many different walks of life, frankly. So I think the psychology of money plays into the right questions being asked in an introductory meeting with an advisor, and then ultimately how you would then prepare a financial plan or overall invest your overall portfolio. It also plays into things like taxes and all the other items that we go through.
Yeah, we'll dive into that. So that's amazing. What are the first secret to start out with? And it's really about what's your why, right? So if you're listening to this, what is your why? Have you defined your why? Have you written down your why? Have you been reminded of your why? Are you thinking about your why? You're setting goals behind your why. And are you planning to achieve your why? And if you haven't defined that or reviewed that, it's not just the quantitative, right? The numbers, right? It's the qualitative. It's the interest, the goals, the values. Money as a tool, and really what's your behavioral money DNA. Is that a fair summary, Mr. Brad Barrett?
Yeah, I like it.
Excellent. What would you say the number 2 secret is to the psychology of money?
I think time value. I mentioned time earlier, but I was mentioning kind of like your why, but I'd also say, what does time mean to you? Like we all have heard this statement before, right? Uh, you're working for your money. At some point, you want your money to work for you, right? And so it's interesting because in fact, right after this, Brett, I have a client meeting who's retiring in 3 months, and we're gonna have a conversation. I was having a conversation last week. We're preparing it with him and his wife today, and we're having this discussion around psychology about time because his mindset has been for 30 years into growing, investing, and saving, contributing, and knowing if he took his family on a vacation or something like that, okay, he can go work overtime or go build something different and like make more money that way. Now it becomes an idea of he's worked for his money. And now we're kind of having the conversation of now the money needs to work for you because he has plenty of it. And so I'm sharing that with him, but I'm also sharing it with him, not just from me just saying it and him trusting me, but I'm also showing him through what we call our wealth forecast or a financial plan, understanding your distribution number. Lately, this has been come around the FIRE, the financial independence number, those kind of things. Showing what your sustainable distribution rate is ultimately shows you your time, because ultimately we're saving and investing to spend our time how we want to do it. We're willing to give up some time, invest in ourselves, save for ourselves, ultimately to use it for ourselves. And so really, when I talk about time, and the second thing, which is a good question here, Brett, is around what people like. It's how time matters to you, right? And I think it can be different. So if you're listening and watching here, it's okay if your time is, I like work. That's what I want to do. I want to do it till I can't. That's great. I have some people that want to retire when they're 40 years old. That's also great, right? But it's making sure that time works for them and how they want to construct it and ultimately how they want to use it. And so money and investing, saving on taxes, saving when posthumously in an estate planning case or anything else like that is ultimately not necessarily about saving money, but also about buying time for you, or ultimately buying time for your heirs or anyone else in your family that you're trying to care for.
Absolutely. That's so good. I love the way you put that. What does time mean for you? What's your financial independence number? And I think it's like you said, it sounds like it's a change of mindset from, hey, I've been working for money to save and invest. Now it's changing and shifting to a mindset of now this money is going to work and save me time and energy, right? To be able to do the
Yeah.
things that I want to be doing and or working more if you want to work more. Or maybe that new entrepreneurial journey or whatever that
Yeah.
might be, that passion that you have, starting that restaurant or starting that tech company, or buying that piece of real estate and doing some kind of project. And so that I think is fantastic. And so how does time matter to you? By the way, we're speaking with Brad Barrett. He's a certified financial planner. You can find him on his YouTube channel, Make Your Money Matter. Let's lead into question number 3, or secret number 3. Brad, what would you say the number 3 secret is to the psychology of money?
I think when you talk about what's your why with money, you ultimately talk about your time. Then I think at some point when it comes to the psychology of money is what are you doing it for? And ultimately not even who are you doing it for? I use this a lot with clients, and I talk about the airplane analogy, right? We've all been there, especially if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. You're boarding a flight and they're going through the whole safety checks and everything like that. And they say, okay, look, if we lose oxygen, right, and the mask comes from the top, make sure to put your oxygen mask on first before your children. Now, it seems crazy because it's just like one of those things like, why would I do that? My first instinct will be immediately to help them. The reality is, we all know we can't help them if we're passed out. You cannot help someone you care for or love if you're broke. You cannot help someone you care for or you love if you have not financially dialed in your situation. So when you talk about what's your why and you refine that ultimately to buy you the most important commodity there is, which is time, and then you ultimately get into who are you doing it for? And by the way, it could be yourself as well, because you deserve some of this, right? I think a lot of us, I say this a lot on our show, we talk about this time philosophy and what money means for us. But, Brett, when I go into these kind of 3 things here, when we talk about, and if we really break it down, we tend to spend our youth or our younger years, if you will, sacrificing our health for our wealth. And then ultimately at some point it switches, maybe it's your 50s or 60s or 70s, where we then sacrifice our wealth for our health. And I think one of the things I really want to share out there, and being a financial advisor nearly 20 years and still young in the game, in my mind, at least energy wise, is really making sure that we have a happy medium and a balance, because the who in this third scenario, right, might be you. And we don't want to be too dilapidated or whatever. We spend all of our years, all of our time, all of our energy, all of our stress focusing on something. we want to enjoy it ourselves as well. So when you define who that is, and it could be your spouse, your kids, your grandkids, it could be a legacy you want to leave with a church, with a charity, with a nonprofit organization. I mean, there's so many great whys out there ultimately that lead into who. And I think when you kind of put all those things together, you get a really good mixture of what money actually means to you, and not money in the sense of like I say this a lot, like comparison's the thief of joy, right? So I don't want anybody looking over the fence and be like, oh, Bob next door just got a new grill. And we think immediately, like that's how marketing in the world works. And that's definitely how money gets into our soul. And I talk a lot about with those clients, right? And again, it's a tool. It is not the tool. It is just a tool to get you access to other things that you want. And it's defining your why, ultimately getting the time that you want out of it. And then for who it might be for, whether it's you or for a family or for who you're trying to care for.
Amazing. Brad Barrett, secret number 3, who are you doing it for? For yourself, for your family member, for the impact that you want to make. And I love that analogy of the oxygen mask, right? Making sure you're putting on yourself, because if you're broke, right? If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a clear purpose with your money, it's going to be very hard to help someone else out. So make sure that you're getting yourself well prepared and in order. And I also like the way you put, we tend to spend our younger years sacrificing our health for our wealth, and our later years sacrificing our wealth for our health. And so be careful not to get too much out of balance. We talked about the 3 secrets here. Number 1, again, was being qualitative, right? Being qualitative. What's your why? Number 2, what is the one thing what does time mean to you? Number 3, who are you doing it for? You can learn more about Brad Barrett by going to his YouTube channel, Make Your Money Matter. We're going to transition into some capital gains tax deferral solutions and strategies. If you're ready for that, Brad. So I'm going to start with this question. I'm curious, how would you define an effective capital gains tax exit plan as it pertains to the psychology of money?
You know, I actually was looking forward to this when you invited me on your show. I appreciate it. I've listened to a lot of your stuff and I love what you're doing. I'd answer it this way, Brett, and I'm really actually curious your thoughts as well, as kind of an open discussion. And this is coming from a financial advisor, and I share this a lot because I obviously work with a lot of CPAs, a lot of tax attorneys, enrolled agents with our clients. To answer that question, to me, the word that comes up is perception, and perception is reality. And I share it this way, right? My grandfather once told me, he goes, don't trip over dollars to save pennies. And as a kid, I was like, I don't really, it didn't really register with me. And I've used that analogy sometimes with clients, in that whatever transaction you're looking at, whether it's real estate, an after-tax holding or investment or whatever it might be. And obviously this depends on your tax bracket, because if you're in a higher ordinary income tax bracket, capital gains would be obviously more, incredible for you. Obviously, if you're around the same ordinary income taxes you are capital gains taxes, it might be different, which by the way is a great example of perception here. But the idea I'm trying to get at is I think a lot of it has to do with understanding, back to my original number 1, at least from me, from a financial planning standpoint, right? Is what's your why? I mean, obviously we all want to keep more than what we're giving away, especially to our federal government. There's no doubt about it, right? They call it gross tax for a reason. It's disgusting what we send up to them. So it's important, I think, when we talk about perception, that's how I'd kind of open that discussion, Brett, honestly. And obviously you're the captain in that chair, and you obviously are very, very well versed in that. And I think when we design, whether it's, Roth conversions, Roth discussions with clients, we design 1031 discussions, get the, accommodator inside of there for our clients, or whatever tax strategy it might be. I guess what I'm trying to share is we try to do it all relative to the client. Because I definitely, in our over 2,000 clients that we serve, we have, obviously we have varying different net worths. We also have very different backgrounds, which leads to my, understanding who they are, and then their perception of money. We have some clients that say, look, I understand I don't pay taxes, but the liquidity to me means more than the illiquidity. So you can't argue that, right? They understand the tax rules and they know it's going to go down. And as much as I'd love for them to defer it, right? They're like, look, the liquidity means more to me right now because I want to do X, Y, or Z. So I'd rather do that than other things. And so for us, as a planning side, we get the easy chair, I think, in this scenario. You guys have the tough one of actually designing it, but we get to kind of sit with them and kind of say, okay, what is your goal with your money? Which is always a good question, right? Again, back to those 3 philosophies you should go into, right? And I think when you talk about taxes, particularly capital gains or an exit strategy as it relates to capital gains, it'll also do with the perception of the client and what their ultimate goal is. If they're okay paying the taxes, okay, great. Then it was obviously a successful transition or exit. If they're really tied up on not paying a single cent, then you're going to have to go through every strategy known to man right, to be able to do it. And the best part about our country is, if you will, is we have a pretty open tax code with a lot of great strategies you can utilize. And I'm sure, obviously that's something that's right into your wheelhouse.
Absolutely, but I love the way you put that, and I think that's the key here. And how to build an effective capital gains tax exit plan always starts with you, the listener, you, the investor, you who have built that business, that real estate, invested in, a home at a good time and held on it for a long time. That cryptocurrency, that stock, and what's effective for one may not be as effective for the other. And defining if effective could mean liquidity, of course, could mean diversification. Could mean not having to deal with landlords, or not having to deal with a government or a state like California, who's so restrictive on landlords.
Yeah.
Not having to deal with tenants, toilets, trash, termites. Moving out of that big house that you feel like you're real estate rich, but maybe a little cash flow light, and be able to defer that capital gains tax. If people want to learn more about what options are available, and that's key, because it's not just a one size fits all. There's multiple options. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, where we can help you navigate different strategies as pertains to the Deferred Sales Trust in particular, but also Delaware Statutory Trust, Opportunity Zones, 1031 exchanges. Also get with Brad Barrett, who can also help you navigate it as well, and compare and contrast notes, because guess what? It's good to get second opinions and to figure out what's the most effective way. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's that donor advised fund coupled with the Deferred Sales Trust. Sometimes it's that deferred sales trust coupled with the 1031 exchange. It all just depends on what you're trying to achieve. Go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Brad, do you want to add anything to that?
No, actually, I love it. That's totally how we would design it too. And I think understanding the team you have in place matters, right? I've always told clients that a financial advisor, a good one, should be a quarterback to you, not the only team member, right? You got to have other people on the field, and kind of run the ball down the field for you. So employing a lot of people, comparing notes, multiple strategies is very important.
Excellent. Ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Knowing what you know now, Brad, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget make sure to tell yourself to do?
Never stop investing. And by the way, I know how that sounds coming from a financial advisor, but there's been multiple times in my life where I was like, I'll peel back on my 401k contribution for this reason or whatever. And I would have said, if you look back at history and you understand dollar cost averaging, especially within a consistency of like every 2 weeks or biweekly, I don't care if it's $100. It's irrelevant. The amount, the amount obviously matters over time, but it's more the consistency. So I'd have been more consistent with myself when I was 25.
Excellent. Question number 2. What's the number one book you've recommended or gifted most in the past year?
Oh, I already led with it, so I already answered this one. Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, an incredible book.
Excellent. I just downloaded it on my Audible, so I'm going to listen to it hopefully this week.
You'll love it, Brett. Honestly, it's one of those books, like, we read a lot of these kind of things. He wrote this in one of the most exceptional ways I've ever seen. So it's a great book.
Fantastic. Next question. What are you most curious about right now?
That's a good question. I think what I'm most curious about, if I look at, that's actually kind of in your wheelhouse in tax codes, right? I'm just very curious how we're going to start seeing the sunset coming up here in 25, and just how that's all going to play out. Obviously, it has a lot to do with some of our clients and their longer term planning. And I'm meaning the Trump tax cuts here that are set to sunset here in 25, because obviously as it stands right now, it's going to revert back to almost the Bush era tax cuts. And so curious about reform in that regard, and just how it's going to look for our clients long term.
Absolutely. And real quick, for people who don't know what we're referring to, in 2026, basically, the beginning of that, you're going to have estate tax exemptions cutting in half, which means 24 million married is going to about 12 million single, and about 12 to 14 million singles to about 6 to 7, unless they change something. It could change something, but that's something to consider. Everything above and beyond that is subject to a 40% death tax, not eligible for the stepped up basis. I mean, you still get the stepped up basis, but your estate tax is something separate from that, as well as cap gains tax will probably go higher as well. There's a lot of challenges out there, so just be prepared for what's going on. Last question, Brad. After all your success helping all the people you've helped, what's the number one way you stay centered in your values and stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new heights?
For me, if it's okay sharing, it's God. I'm very involved with my church. My wife and I were saved, and it's one of those things that keeps us centered, grounded, and I share people with this often. It's God, family, work. And I think if you keep it in that order, you find that you're actually serving the people better when you have that order in my life. So that's what keeps me centered and going.
Amen, Brad. I can't appreciate you sharing that. And likewise, that's the order that I strive for every single day as well. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, Brad, could you mind one last time? And by the way, before we even go there, I want to thank you for being on the show, sharing a tremendous amount of wisdom here in just 24 minutes or so. I want to encourage you to keep using your strength to connect with others and also to connect with them in a real way, to empathize with them in each of their unique circumstances, whether that be wealth, coming from wealth, not coming from a lot of wealth, and basically customizing solutions to help your clients create and preserve more wealth and ultimately unlock their freedoms and make the impact with their wealth that they so want to make. For people who want to get in touch with you, could you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah. Well, again, Brett, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for watching and listening. You can find me at Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett on YouTube. We also have a corresponding podcast that streams on any platform you'd otherwise download a podcast. Just type in Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett. You can also go to our website at onecapital.com. You can find out about myself, all of my partners, our team members here. You can also download and subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel there as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Brad Barrett. And I also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast, also streamed on Expert CRE Secrets Podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. And also not having a dream team to help you execute on that clear plan is the enemy. And using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, or getting with someone like Brad Barrett to plan out your wealth and exit plan, is an amazing way for you to create and preserve more wealth. Take action today. Start planning, start preparing, start building your team. If you want to connect with us, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Thanks so much for listening or watching. Please rate, review, subscribe, and we will talk to you